The Sanjiao channel arises at the extremity of the second to the small finger, that's the ring finger, comes out at the space of both fingers, follows the exterior wrist, comes outside the arm between the two bones, pierces the elbow, follows the outside bicep, up the shoulder, crosses and comes out in back of the foot, Shaoyang, to enter Chuepian, stomach 12, spreading to the center of the chest, Ren 17, scatters to fall into the pericardium, down the diaphragm, following to belong to the Sanjiao. The second branch starts at stomach 12, up the back of the neck, behind the ear, coming out the ear apex, bends down the cheek, and arriving at its light. The third branch, from the back of the ear, enters the ear center, comes out to the front of the ear, crosses in front of gallbladder 3, Kejuren, crosses the cheek, and arrives at the eye's outer corner. A few things are suggested here. The ear, as well as the cheek, play prominently in this description. Hence we can say that the Sanjiao channel is the ear channel, and also the TMJ channel, and we would mobilize Sanjiao points to treat ear or cheek conditions. And if we put these in the context of the first and second branch, we might conclude that this is not just the ear or the cheek that we're talking about here, but actually the tonsils. The Sanjiao is the official of irrigation, which connotes the lymphatic system. Lymph meets fluids, and the lymph system drains the interstitial fluids and the blood, and it is an irrigation system. The first branch describes the auxiliary lymph system of the arm, and then, as it moves to stomach 12, the subclavian vein, it describes the thoracic duct, going from the lumbar spine up stomach 12, irrigating the chyle and lymph from the digestive system into the blood at the subclavian vein. The second branch describes the lymph and glands of the neck, including the tonsils. The only part missing is the auxiliary lymph system of the legs, and if we then include a branch that is sometimes described as going down to bladder 39, the lower head point of the Sanjiao, we actually have included that part of the lymphatic system as well. So we see that the Sanjiao channel has an intimate connection to the immune system. Lingshu 10 describes sore throat and swelling as Sanjiao symptoms. The glands at the area of Sanjiao 16 reflect the state of the immune system, and the major immune point is on the edge of the radius, just below the elbow, an area or a point that can be described as between the large intestine and the Sanjiao channel. Another feature of the Sanjiao is its relationship to the autonomic nervous system. Lingshu 4 describes symptoms of the Sanjiao as similar to ascites, and then Dong Jie, distress and anxiety or urgency. Jiao in Sanjiao is supposed to mean charred or burnt, and Sanjiao means the 3 burning spaces. The character Jiao is a bird that is being roasted on the fire, but its common use tends to mean anxious or worried, as one would be if one were a bird being roasted. The 3 burners are also three spaces where anxiety, overactivity can take place: the chest, the stomach, and the gut. Most of us will tend to say we feel our anxiety in one of these 3 spaces. We do not tend to feel anxious in, say, the elbow. So the 3 burners can also be looked at 3 places of anxiety, of overactivity. The Sanjiao coordinates the movement of the 3 jiaos, which means it also relates to the 3 diaphragms, the vocal cords in the throat, which is at the top of the upper burner, the respiratory diaphragm, the top of the middle burner, and the perineal diaphragm, which is the lower edge of the lower burner. There is no clear membrane or diaphragm between the lower and the middle jiaos. These 3 diaphragms are highly correlated to the state of the autonomic nervous system. At the throat, we have the vagus nerve. At the diaphragm, we have the phrenic nerve. So these two regulate our breathing and nervous system, and the lifting of the perineal floor activates the sacral parasympathetic ganglia and allows for tension and anxiety in the chest to be released. So the San Jiao has a very strong connection to the nervous system, to tendencies towards burning or anxiety. So these are the four themes that we see in the San Jiao: immunity, lymph and irrigation, the ears, the tonsils, the TMJ, and the autonomic nervous system. San Jiao 1, Guang, the gate to the thoroughfare, can also be described as Cheng, which means to rinse or to flush or to charge. These two characters are often used interchangeably, and in the case of San Jiao 1, one actually does see both variations. San Jiao 2, Ye Men, the fluids gate, again suggests the role of the San Jiao in the lymph system, the water irrigation system. So both points seem to be pointing to the lymphatic system. Both of these points are used together as the metal-water combination for the channel. I do not tend to check San Jiao 6, the fire point, for sensitivity very often, but San Jiao 1 and 2 are used often for lymph clearing, with spleen metal water, spleen 5 and 9. And on the right side, San Jiao 1 and 2 are used for gallstones, together with right side gallbladder metal water, gallbladder 43, 44. San Jiao 3, Dong Jie, the central island, is again suggestive of the irrigation, lymph function of the San Jiao. In this case, it might be suggestive of the tissue itself as the bank of the river, or it might be suggesting the accumulation of dredges, of sand. Another way to look at this idea of a riverbank is from its use. San Jiao 3 is a point people use for ears, and it releases the mastoid. The mastoid and the occiput are like a riverbank. As the river of the spine moves up, it comes into the occipital area, kind of like an island or a bank, and deposits the sand there. And that's why we have all these wind points at the occiput. This is where things get accumulated. All the wind, all the stuff that moves, gets stuck there. Although people often think of San Jiao 3 as a low back pain point, because it is one of the Yao Tong Shuis, I believe this is more due to its effect on the occiput and the mastoid. It releases the mastoid and the very top of the SCM. This is where the atlas reflects. So we believe it also releases the atlas, which means it will then release the rest of the spine. But my main use for this point is for the neck rather than for the low back. San Jiao 4, Yang Che, the pool of yang, can be looked at as the pool, the depression in the wrist that is created when we reach out for or we pressed against something. So it is a yang pool. A pool is created when we activate something yang, when we reach out to the yang. And we can also look at it as the Yuan point on the Yuan Qi channel. So it is the pool of the Yuan Qi. This is a point that I use with pericardium 7 for shoulder pain as one of the Kawai wrist pairs. I also use it on the left with Ocumoxa for many gynecological conditions. In Yitianyi's combination of right spleen 6, Ren 12, and left San Jiao 4. I take the point exactly at the center, where there is a depression, not in the depression that is on the ulnar side, where most texts seem to have it. The location in the center offers both a deeper pool, and it is also right across from pericardium 7, and it is in line with San Jiao 5 and the rest of the channel, for example. So it makes more sense to take it in the center. San Jiao 5, Waiguan, the gate to the outside, can also be interpreted in relationship to the lymph flow and immunity, which are, after all, about interaction with the outside, how we let things through after checking them into the body. Certainly, many TCM practitioners use the point in this manner when they diagnose, say, wind heat. For me, the main idea behind the gate, or the checkpoint of the outer, is that it is the pass-through of our interactions with the world, hence how we react with our nervous system to the world. Sanjiao 5 is a major point when the pulse is rapid for releasing the nervous system. It is considered the point of choice for sympathetic dominance and pain conditions. I tend to use Sanjiao 8 for most patients and Sanjiao 5 when the pulse is rapid. These 2 points release the SCM on the opposite side. Therefore, they allow for parasympathetic feedback through the vagus nerve, and they also release the cervical spine on the same side as the point. It is not clear to me what Sanjiao 6, Jigo, the supporting or building ditch, and Sanjiao 7, Huizong, the meeting of the ancestors, mean. They both seem to imply irrigation and pathways, and given that they are describing almost the same location, but serve different functions, meaning one is the fire point of the channel and the other one is the shi point of the channel, one assumes that there must be something worth further investigation here. And my guess is that it somehow has to do with the small intestine, mostly because the character Jie, to branch or to support, which appears in Sanjiao 6, only appears once in another point, and that is small intestine 7. And the character Zong in Sanjiao 7 appears only in small intestine 11, Tianzong. Both Wei and Zong in Sanjiao 7 imply an association. Wei is to meet, and Zong is a sect or a meeting under a roof. This suggests that this area has some sort of meetings, and this next point, Sanjiao 8, Sangyang Luo, the meeting of the 3 young, the networking of the 3 young, suggests the same thing. Sanjiao 8, Sangyang Luo, has a similar idea in the name as spleen 6, San Yin Jiao. We basically have 3-arm mile, large intestine 10. We have a 3-leg mile, stomach 36. We have a yin meeting, 3 yin meetings in the legs, spleen 6, and a 3 yang meeting in the arms, Sanjiao 8. The other 2 points with the character 3 are not referring to 3 as something that encompasses or unites. Those are large intestine 3, the 3rd interval, Sanjian, which is in relationship to Ejian, large intestine 2, and bladder 22, the Sanjiao Shu, which is in relationship to the Sanjiao and not to 3 as a concept of unity between heaven and earth and man. Sanjiao 9, Sedu, the 4 ditches or the 4 waterways where buying and selling, commerce is done, suggests the 4 rivers of China. That suggests the whole landscape, encompassing the whole of China, or even encompassing the whole world. I take both points as 1/3 of the distance below the elbow, which is above both Sanjiao 8 and Sanjiao 9, according to the way the texts put them. If you slide your arm up the Sanjiao channel, you will naturally stop at the mound of the muscle, just about 1/3 below the elbow. This is Sanjiao 8, and you can choose to call it Sanjiao 9 as well if you like. This is the point that releases the SCM, releases the cervical spine, releases the TMJ. All these areas are connected with the nervous system and allow for parasympathetic feedback into the body. This gives us a view into their name. At the network of yang, Sanjiao 8, we can relax the yang, the nervous system. At the 4 rivers, if we choose to call it that, we can see the whole landscape, so it is smooth and easeful, not mountainous or chopped. If the pulse is rapid, Sanjiao 5, in the regular location of Sanjiao 5, will tend to do a better job than Sanjiao 8, 1/3 below the elbow. But for a slow or regular pulse, Sanjiao 8 tends to do a better job. The next points, the upper arm points, are a bit of an enigma. Sanjiao 10, Tianjing, the heavenly well. Sanjiao 11, Qingleng Yuan, the clear, cool abyss. And Sanjiao 12, Xiaolu, which Ellis translates as dispersing riverbed, but I think it might be more suggesting something like vaporizing water, with some undertone of dispersing the flow. So, on the one hand, these can all be referring to the water theme, the lymphatic immune capacity of the Sanjiao. But at the same time, they seem to also be referring to the autonomic nervous system component. And since these points are not commonly used, it is hard to know what connotations the ancients might have had when naming them. In terms of referring to the nervous system component, Sanjiao 10, Tianjing, suggests that this relates to the well, the source of heaven. That would be possibly the brain. Sanjiao 11, Qingleng Yuan, the clear, cool abyss, suggests clarity and calmness, soothing the water, making them cool. Sanjiao 12, Xiaolu, the river flow that is disappearing as in vaporizing. They all suggest a smoother of either heaven or of water in either cool or vaporizing form. Given that none of these points are commonly used in acupuncture, one might wonder if they did not come about from another tradition. The Sanjiao line above the elbow produces a rather zingy feeling on pressure, and the mobilization of the tricep is related to the freedom or the space that we can have in our shoulders. And this may be how these points have come to be named, based on the capacity of the activation of this area to produce freedom in the chest. Or perhaps it is about the idea that we need to rest our arms in order to smooth, cool, and clear the mind. Sanjiao 13, Nahui, the upper arm meeting, and Sanjiao 14, Jian Liao, the shoulder bone hole, seem to be referring to their location in the shoulder. They tend to be less popular than large intestine 14 and 15 with most practitioners, perhaps because the Sanjiao points are in the back, so less convenient to needle. I basically do not use these points. However, when I needle small intestine 9-10 for the purpose of releasing the autonomic nervous system, it is being needled towards Sanjiao 13. Sanjiao 15, Tian Liao, the heavenly bone hole, is a reflex for hormonal issues. The character Liao is not simply a hole in the bone, but it is the sound of the wind soaring inside a bone. It suggests something like a conch, something that gets amplified. The space in the bone in heaven would suggest the space of the pituitary gland inside the skull. Kiiko likes to look at small intestine 13 as the posterior pituitary shoe, and Yi Tianyi liked Sanjiao 15 for a similar idea. Both points are in relative close proximity, and the whole area of the medial suprascapular fossa reflects hormones. Pressure pain here reflects hormonal or pituitary issues and can be resolved using UB32. And pressure pain on bladder 32 can be resolved by using small intestine 13 or Sanjiao 15 area. Sanjiao 16, Tian You, the heavenly window, suggests that this is the path up to the skull, up to the brain. And yet, its major clinical significance is that it sits over the lymph glands of the neck and therefore serves as one of the major reflexes for the immune system. One would have expected the point that indicates the way to heavenly enlightenment to be more clearly related to the autonomic nervous system function of the Sanjiao, rather than to be its quintessential lymphatic point. But this is the clinical reality of the point. Of course, clearing the neck, especially anything that relates to the occiput or the SCM does help to smooth out the nervous system. And in fact, there are times when pressure pain on Ren 17 or Ren 12 can only be resolved with clearing and then needling Sanjiao 16. Pressure pain on Sanjiao 16 indicates lymph, immune congestion, and is treated with the immune point between the Sanjiao and the large intestine channels just below the elbow. The opposite is true also, and tennis elbow pain can be treated with Sanjiao 16 as a supporting point. With Sanjiao 17, Yi Fang, the wind screen, we get the kind of name we might have expected at Sanjiao 16. Yes, Sanjiao 17 can also reflect lymph congestion, but usually more when it affects or blocks the ears. Notice that the character Yi, shade, contains in it the character for echo, the ears go muffled kind of thing. I use Sanjiao 17 as a reflex for ear infections and blockages, for which I tend to use Sanjiao 8 and spleen 7. It can also reflect a structural imbalance in the neck, a bit like a tilted neck that creates a muffling of the ears. In that case, I would look at Sanjiao 3 to resolve it. Sanjiao 18, Jie Mai, the madness pulse, can be interpreted in different ways. It is related to the autonomic nervous smoothing function of the Sanjiao. Ji, as in Sanjiao 18, means furious, mad. It also means malaria. It is composed of the disease radical, and inside it is the character qi, a deed or a contract, the carving of measurements. It is as if you have a contract with the disease. The disease has been carved onto you. Ellis translates the character as spasm or jerking, but this is a slightly different character, qi, which means convulsions. In this case, the character inside the disease radical will be saying indifferent or carefree, and it has at the bottom the heart radical rather than the radical big. So even though it seems Ellis mistranslated the character, clinically, Sanjiao 18 does treat spasms, and it can be interpreted that spasms come up when there is too much fury in us. The type of spasms that Sanjiao 18 treats also includes bronchial spasms, or any kind of spasm in any kind of long-term disease. So it's not just about nervousness, anger, or fury. Sanjiao 18, Jimai, the madness vessel, which also treats spasms, may have been originally related to temporal epilepsy, which is characterized by hallucinations. Sanjiao 19, Lu Xi, the skull resting. The character Xi, to rest, is literally the heart at the bottom and the nose above it, meaning that the heart is breathing, the heart, the mind, is resting. This is another point on the mastoid part of the parietal bone and related to the autonomic nervous system component of the Sanjiao channel. Sanjiao 20, Jiao Sun, the angle descendant, is probably named after its location, at the depression where the apex, the angle of the ear, touches the skull. Again, this is a point with a clear affinity to the autonomic nervous system, the parietal lobe and the temporal bone. That is, the ears and auditory sensations, oral sensations, head and shoulder movements, facial expression, and tongue movement, as well as visual recognition. Sanjiao 18, 19, and 20 should all be checked and considered as either reflexes or treatment points in these kinds of conditions, many of which are classified as Shan disturbances in TCM. They are all in the vicinity of the vagus root at the back of the ear, which Kawai used as a point to treat ears, thyroid, and to release the neck in general, and hence the nervous system. And these 3 points can be used for these conditions as well. Sanjiao 21, Men, the ear gate, like gallbladder 2, Ting Wei, hearing meeting, and small intestine 19, Ting Gong, the hearing palace, can be used as a reflex for ear problems. And these 3 points can also be used for treating ear problems with a Kawai ear point behind the ear, that is the Yang Wei or the vagus root points in the back of the ear. Sanjiao 22, Liao, harmony, is sometimes called Liao to distinguish it from large intestine 19. But large intestine 19's He means grain, and the He in Sanjiao 22 means harmony. But they sound the same. This is another point that is related to the autonomic nervous system, although not very commonly used. Sanjiao 23, Ju Kong, the silk bamboo hole, is likely referring to the eyebrows being at the edge of the brow. Again, this is a point that is in the area of Taiyang, the depression at the side of the head, and reflects the tension in the nervous system. There are no other points with a character Zi, silk, so it is hard to know if this is meant to suggest the smoothness of silk or just threads or fiber. Either interpretation can conjure up the nervous system. The other Kong in point names is gallbladder 19, Nao Kong, the brain hole, the brain emptiness. The top part of Kong is a cave, Shui, and we do have one cave in point names, Qi Shui, the Qi cave, that is kidney 13. Kidney 13 is right next to Ren 4, Guan Yuan, the gate to the primary. Yuan is a pictograph of a head, the 2 top lines over the feet, therefore primary or head. So there seems to be a connection that was left in the name of Sanjiao 23, pointing us towards the brain, a connection we can all recognize if we press on the depression at the edge of the eyebrow.